everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you. And with the upcoming The Marvels shortly due for release, I thought it would be appropriate to take a look back at the first film, which of course was titled Captain Marvel. Now the movie itself was the first live action adaptation of the female version of the Captain Marvel character, or Miss Marvel, which was created way back in 1977. Now the film itself was released on March 8th, 2019, and it was at the time the 21st entry within the then dominant Marvel Cinematic Universe, propelling itself well into its third phase. The film had Oscar-winning actress Brie Larson in the lead roles Carol Danvers, alongside Jude Law, Samuel L. Jackson, Clark Gregg, Natasha Lynch, Ben Mendelssohn, and it was directed by Anne Boden and Ryan Fleck. Now in terms of the MCU, Captain Marvel was very much more of a prequel story set in the 1990s, where we focused on the alien planet of the Kree, where the following Kree warrior named Vers experiences nightmares and visions of another woman calling out to her, hinting very much at a past life. Through the counsel of her mentor Yon Rogue and the ruler of the Kree, the Supreme Intelligence, Vers is instructed to master her abilities and control much more her emotions. Shortly after, she's assigned with a platoon of other Kree warriors to infiltrate and assault a group of Skrulls that have been in conflict for many years with the Kree. After the operation, Vers finds herself being captured and experimented on by the Skrulls, who look to tap into her memories, and this again awakens much more flashbacks into her past. Now Vers manages to break free of the capture and launches an escape pod to crash land on planet Earth in 1995, where we see her crashing into a blockbuster video store. Now certain factions of the Skrulls have also travelled to planet Earth, and after confronting them, Vers then meets and befriends government SHIELD agents Nick Fury and Phil Coulson. After joining forces with them, she eventually discovers that she actually came from planet Earth, where she was originally known as Carol Danvers, and she was an Air Force pilot. As the story progresses, Carol goes on a journey of self-discovery, as well as becoming conflicted in terms of her loyalty to the Kree and also her continued discovery of the Skrull race. Now when looking back at Captain Marvel, to say that it's one of the most controversial of the MCU movies, or certainly a turning point within the franchise, would be a massive understatement, for a whole multitude of reasons. But in terms of the film itself, I'd say overall it's a very mundane and average effort. It's not the very worst of the MCU, but it's just a very underwhelming superhero movie in general. There's just nothing stand out in terms of the action sequences, characterization, dialogue or effects. A lot of these elements that the best MCU movies truly exceeded at, but Captain Marvel just feels very flat. I look in particular at the film's overall aesthetic, which looks surprisingly very muted in terms of its colours and visual contrasts, and dare I say the movie looks quite cheap, which is very telling considering its 150 million plus budget. The overall sets and background, especially when we look at the planet Kree, look very bland and uninspired. The sequence where we see the Kree attacking a Skull operation should absolutely have been a real exciting set piece, but it's just very nondescript and forgettable. Probably the best executed sequence within the film is when we see Danvers on planet Earth pursuing one of the Skrulls in Los Angeles, and we see her running around the streets and amongst the train, and this sequence is fine, but again it's nothing truly outstanding. And even when we get to the climatic act, where Carol emerges in her full costume, flying airborne, taking on all of the Kree spaceships, this again should be an absolute euphoric superhero sequence, but once more it just feels very by the numbers and again very underwhelming. Putting the aesthetics to one side, when we look at the overall plot and on the surface, it should be very sound. We have the heroine or lead character going on a journey to discover her past, and this type of narrative should be very engaging to the audience. The concept of Carol unravelling another secret of her past and connecting or reconnecting with her human heritage, providing the key to her unlocking her potential, should be something that's really compelling. But her backstory just isn't really fully realised. We get hints of her life as a pilot, there are certain allusions to an abusive childhood, but the movie never goes anywhere with these elements, wasting the potential to really connect with Carol Danvers as an overall personality. Now easily the best segment of the film is the dynamic between both Carol and Nick Fury, who play well off each other and have good chemistry as we see her again beginning to unlock her memories. So we then focus on the performances, and of course we have to look at Brie Larson front and centre, and contrary to majority opinion, I really don't feel that her performance is as bad. This is much more of an example of the lacking of the writing of the character, giving her little range to exhibit a lot of charisma or personality. It's much more of a straightforward, more stoic personality that she plays here, and I think she does fine with what she's given. As mentioned before, the chemistry with Nick Fury is the real highlight, and I think she definitely benefited from having Samuel L. Jackson, accompanied by some de-aging effects, being able to still bring his own appealing persona to his character as Nick Fury. And I feel it definitely benefited Brie Larson having an experienced actor like Samuel L. Jackson to play alongside with. And in terms of all of the supporting roles, I think they're overall fine, whether it's Ben Mendelssohn's as Talos, or Lashana Lynch as Maria Rambeau. All of these actors perform well with what they're given throughout the movie. So we then go on to the box office release, and financially the film was a super smash blockbuster, going on to gross over $1.1 billion from a budget of around 150 to 175 million. It was at the time the 5th highest grossing movie of 2019, and it was the latest in the commercial apex of the MCU within its phase 3. And this was of course the build up to the conclusion of Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet saga, which was set of course with Avengers Infinity War and concluded also with Avengers Endgame. Captain Marvel became the highest grossing female-led character superhero movie, even surpassing DC's Wonder Woman from 2017. Now, unfortunately, that was only half of the story of this movie. As mentioned before, it remains one of MCU's most controversial films, and that controversy sadly came from lead actress Brie Larson. In a statement at an awards ceremony in June 2018, when speaking about diversity in journalism, she went even further, stating that she didn't really have much care for 40-year-old white dudes talking about the movie A Wrinkle in Time. Now, this statement instantly alienated the larger demographic of the superhero audience. A lot of the 40-year-old white dudes that she made reference to would have been the demographic that grew up watching superhero movies. In fact, a lot of this audience would have been people who indeed created characters like Captain Marvel. So this was really a misjudged statement from Brie Larson, who I still believe just got caught up in a moment when she said what she said. And sadly, it was from this statement and Captain Marvel as a film which really began for the first time to see a concentrated negative backlash towards the MCU. Whereas previously you were either very devoted to the MCU or at the worst indifferent, this was the first time that the franchise was coming under heavy fire, with many accusations of pushing more diversity and identity agenda rather than comic book entertainment or character development. The often coined phrase MCU was only one element of the huge shift in online antagonism and negativity, of which was aimed towards Brie Larson. We saw endless waves of YouTube videos and posts full of outrage and negativity, which also saw many influencers build their own platforms and channels. Now, whilst Avengers Endgame and Spider-Man Far From Home were also massive successes, Captain Marvel really was the turning point and pivot in how the MCU's perception changed within the mainstream. Many fans and audiences just felt that Captain Marvel as a character was being pushed too hard to the forefront of the MCU, and they felt that this was a position that she just didn't earn. With all the other characters, we saw much more of organic development and progression over multiple films. It seemed that Captain Marvel was given a title that she hadn't really earned yet. And yes, it can be argued that there are certain asterisks over the billion-dollar success. Being positioned in between two monumental Avengers films, Infinity War and Endgame, Marvel certainly gave the impression that Captain Marvel as a character was going to be hugely integral in the defeat towards Thanos, but when we went to watch Endgame, that wasn't proven to be the case. We also look at the massive online negativity, which in a certain sense caused a certain rallying of support for Brie Larson, as there were many people who felt that the overall criticism towards her was over the top, and went to watch the movie not because they were enthusiastic about it, but more so to spite all of the online trolls and haters. And sadly, this was the real legacy, if there ever is one, for Captain Marvel. On the one hand, I can fully understand that Marvel wanted to have their dominant female character, but again, we could argue that they already had that with Black Widow, who was a substantial character within the MCU for many years. And once more, fans couldn't understand why somebody like Carol Danvers was getting her own movie before Natasha Romanoff was. And again, we understand that this was clearly Marvel's attempt to have their own Wonder Woman of their universe. But the mistake they made was really forcing this character forward, and in some way, shape or form, they kind of lost the foundation in how they built their characters previously, and it just feels that forcing Captain Marvel to the forefront also fell in line to where we are currently with the MCU, it seems now, within Phase 4 and Phase 5, where it certainly comes across as if we're concentrating much more on pushing forward agenda and identity and feminism rather than good storytelling and great comic book entertainment and escapism, which were really the foundations of the MCU, certainly from phases 1 to 3. So there's my overall thoughts and feelings when looking back at the first Captain Marvel movie. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you have any other topics or movies or television series that you'd like to see me cover within this channel, then also let me know within the comments, and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on that subject matter within the future. Please consider hitting like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.